Cool, unsettling air whipped across Ruben's face as he peered through the cemetery gate. Slight fog covered the floor of the abandoned grounds. Man, I'm not so sure I can do this, Ruben stuttered. Calvin, who stood behind him, clutching bolt cutters, responded, Guarantee you won't feel that way once you see how much gold and stuff they bury these people with. Ruben turned to face Calvin and stepped to the side. Once Calvin cut the lock to the gate, it hit the ground with such force that made Ruben's heart skip a beat. The pair entered the large rusted gates and scanned the area. Only headstones, accompanied by unkept grass and a worn ornate mausoleum, lie in the distance. Ruben squinted, swearing that he saw the door to the mausoleum ajar, but he decided to brush this off and chalk it up to his guilty conscience. Calvin then gripped Ruben's shoulder, shaking him from his thoughts. Come on, we got a lot of ground to cover, he said excitedly, walking towards the grave of their first victim. Ruben followed suit. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours passed. Dozens of graves were dug up at their hands. Wristwatches, cufflinks, pearls, and diamonds filled their bags. Ruben leaned against his shovel. First, he eyed the untouched grave on his left, and then turned his attention to Calvin down on his right, who was hard at work digging. He muttered, Can we take a break? We've been at this for a while. Calvin barely looked up from the hole and stated, You can. I'm going to finish her up first. He nudged his head towards the freshly exposed casket. With a look of disgust on his face, Ruben turned to walk away, but violently crashed downwards. Landing on his back, he took a moment to realize he had fallen into the same untouched grave that he just had looked at. He popped up from the open casket as a pair of hands grabbed his jacket, pulling him out. It was Calvin. Ruben, now above ground, looked around frantically as Calvin stood frozen in confusion. We did not dig this one. I just seen it before I stepped into it. He placed his hands upon his head, pushing his hair back. He took another look around before pausing. Calvin tried to reason. Well, maybe that one was dug and you just didn't see it because of the fog. Ruben pointed down at the ground near them, eventually bringing his finger up, now pointing into the distance, exposing mounds of dirt that weren't previously there. Yeah, just like neither of us noticed that all of them were dug up, huh? He responded. Calvin shook his head. That's impossible. That wasn't there before. It's time to go, Ruben said as he grabbed his shovel and swiftly walked away. Calvin grabbed his shovel and a bag of stolen items and took off after him. At the cemetery gate, the two of them took one last look back before exiting through the now thickened fog. Once the fog cleared, they were hit with disbelief as they stepped into what appeared to be the same cemetery they just attempted to leave. There's no way. Did we go to the wrong gate or something? Ruben breathed heavily. There's only one entrance, exit. I scoped it out the other night, Calvin voiced, his demeanor growing in frustration. Let's just keep going. Maybe I was wrong. The pair hurried through the cemetery, passing the familiar tombstones, making it to another gate that was once again covered with fog. They stepped through, eyes met with identical, eerie atmosphere from which they had just left. Okay, I'm tired of this. I'm going back. Calvin turned to walk back through the gate. Just then, two gray, decrepit hands emerged from the fog, clasping his neck, pulling him into nothingness. The shovel and bag of goods dropped to the ground as Ruben was left horrified, stuck.